It is the largest search operation ever conducted in Great Britain. In October 2012, a girl disappears in Wales. From the outset, it is clear that April Jones has been abducted. She was approached by a driver while playing and lured into his car. Just like in the movies. Nothing like this has ever happened before in this small Welsh town. For the investigators and April's family, a race against time begins. Because when a child goes missing, every minute counts.
But please find her. April is only 5 years old.
It is Monday, October 1st, 2012. Although meteorologically speaking, autumn has just begun, it is pleasantly warm. The evening sun is shining over the town of Machynlleth in Wales at around 7 p.m. In the briny Gog neighborhood, a few children are out on the streets. It's almost time for bed, but on what is probably one of the last warm evenings of the year, the parents are turning a blind eye. The place is small and tranquil, and the children all know each other and are close friends. They know their way around the area and never stray far from home. 5-year-old April Jones is also still outside that evening. She had swimming lessons in the afternoon. Afterwards, a friend came over to her house. The girls had dinner together and were allowed to watch a Disney cartoon. Afterwards, the two of them really wanted to go out together for a while. It's actually a bit late for April's parents' liking, but since the weather is so nice and April won't give up, they give in. The children are out on their bikes, riding up and down the streets. April loves her pink bike more than anything. It has a special meaning for her because April has infantile cerebral palsy in her left leg. This is a movement disorder that can occur during brain development as a baby. April was premature and had a complicated start in life. But a few years later, apart from the problems with her leg, there is no sign of this. She can play normally, but when she gets tired, walking is almost impossible for April. Riding her bike works much better. For April, who at the age of 5 is slowly asserting her independence, her bike is also an important piece of independence. When she's out on her bike, she doesn't have to call her parents or siblings to pick her up and carry her home. She can ride all by herself, even if it takes a little longer. And April's family is just grateful every day that their little girl is doing well. After she was born, it wasn't even clear whether April would survive. It was a difficult time for her parents, Paul and Coral, as well as for her older sister and brother. But over the years, all that has almost faded into the background. April is now a very happy, bright child who enjoys life to the fullest. When April and her friends set off on their bikes at 7 p.m., she's in a good mood as always. But just 15 minutes later, she will disappear forever. At 7:29 p.m., a call comes in to the Machynlleth police. A distraught Coral Jones reports that her 5-year-old daughter April has just been kidnapped. Coral can hardly speak. Her friend Val stands by her side during the phone call.
This emergency?
My daughter's been kidnapped. Val, can you speak to somebody? She's gone off in a car with somebody. Somebody picked her up in a car or something.
Okay, what's the name of the child that's gone missing?
April Jones.
How old is she?
5.
Less than 10 minutes later, the first police patrol arrives at the scene. The patrol first talks to the friend April was playing with outside. She says that April suddenly got into a car with a man at around 7:15 p.m. April seemed very happy. The car was a gray van, which drove away immediately. Only about 5 minutes later, April's older brother came out. He was supposed to bring April inside because it was getting late. But April was already gone. And her friend, who is also only 7 years old, can only report what she saw. The child must have been in total shock during all the commotion. And yet the police now have to rely entirely on her. In a kidnapping, especially of a child, every minute counts. The police have not ruled out the possibility that April knew the driver. April's friend said she looked happy when she got into the car. The police are hoping that it may all be a false alarm, that a friend of the family or a neighbor picked April up for some reason. But there is also the other, much less pleasant possibility that someone has taken advantage of the child's innocence and has very bad intentions. April's family and neighbors first take care of the residential area. Within a very short time, hundreds of volunteers gather to search the area for the girls. Meadows, gardens, small streams. The search parties literally turn over every stone. Calls for April echo throughout the town. Meanwhile, the police can take care of even more extensive measures. After all, witnesses say that April got into a gray van. But there are many of those, even in a small town like McKinleth. The investigators spend the whole night dwelling on one detail from the witnesses' statements. April's friend said that April got into the driver's side, but that doesn't make any sense, of course. April is only 5 years old, so it's obvious that she can't drive herself. But even if she could, how would that have worked? Did the kidnapper put April on his lap and drive off with her? And if so, wouldn't the witness have said so? But after a while, the police have a light bulb moment. April got into the driver's side, her friend said. And which side is the driver's side? In the UK, it's on the right. But in other European countries, it's not on the right, but on the left. What April's friend actually meant to say was that April got into the right side and most likely into a car with the driver's seat on the left. And that is extremely rare in Great Britain, especially in a small town in the middle of Wales. Thanks to this statement, the police are able to narrow down their search even further. They are no longer looking for just any gray van, but specifically one of the rare left-hand drive vehicles. In the early hours of the morning, the police are still evaluating material from surveillance cameras in the town. They come across a car that matches the witness's description exactly. A van, gray in color, left-hand drive. It belongs to a man named Mark Bridger, who lives nearby. What's more, the van was seen at a nearby gas station shortly after April's disappearance. The police decide to pay Mark a visit immediately. But when the police arrive at noon on October 2nd, Mark Bridger's house is empty. Without further ado, the investigators gain access. Inside the house, there is a strong chemical smell, somewhat like cleaning products. It is also very warm. Although no one is there, a fire is burning in the fireplace. A rifle hangs above it. 2 pairs of handcuffs and numerous knives are lying around. Although none of this is illegal per se, the police officers still have an uneasy feeling. However, there are no concrete signs of a crime at first. Later, it emerges that Mark told friends that he was trained by the Special Air Service. He claims to have been stationed with the British Army in Myanmar and later in Afghanistan and Cuba. This would also fit in well with the weapons in his house. But this CV and the reason for the weapons are completely fabricated. At around 3:30 p.m. on October 2nd, Mark Bridger is spotted by chance by a police patrol. He is walking calmly along a highway. At this point, April has been missing for 20 hours. The investigators strike and take Mark into custody. Until then, he had been a rather inconspicuous guy. Mark Bridger is 46 years old and the father of 6 children. He is originally from London but moved to Wales in his 20s. He initially worked in a slaughterhouse, then did various manual jobs and worked as a taxi driver. Mark is divorced from his wife but has a new girlfriend who is also a mother. Mark's girlfriend's children go to the same school as April. Mark often picks up the children from school, so he may have known April by sight. And April knew him. This fits with the fact that April was reportedly very relaxed and got into the car voluntarily. If she knows an adult from a safe environment such as school and also identifies him as a father figure to other children, then it is not unreasonable that she trusted him. Since April disappeared the night before, the police are still hoping to find her alive. Mark is asked directly and without beating around the bush where April is. He keeps saying he knows nothing about it. But after a while, he begins to talk. However, the investigators do not believe his statement.
I came down to see my daughter's teacher. She had a parents' evening. And I then parked up opposite my girlfriend's house, which I believe is not far away from April's mother and father's house. Stupid. I'd had a few to drink, and there was 2 girls on their bikes. I remember the dark-headed girl came behind the car. I looked to see where the other girl was, and I couldn't see this other little girl. And the next minute, the bike was there. I started the car up. As I went to pull away, the car, there wasn't a thud. I can't understand. The car rose up. As I opened the car, I walked behind. And underneath the front of the car is now, I know to be April.
Mark claims that he accidentally ran over April while pulling out of a parking space. He goes on to say that he lifted April out of the car and placed her in the passenger seat. She had no pulse, and mouth-to-mouth resuscitation did not help. That's why he drove off to take April to a doctor. Mark claims to have memory gaps for the time after that. He remembers being in various places, near the train station, at the monument in the town center, and in his house. At some point, April was simply no longer in his car. He insists that he never disposed of April's body anywhere. Somehow, he must have unconsciously taken her to a safe place. At this point, at the latest, the investigators are certain that Mark is lying. With his story about the alleged fatal accident, he's probably just trying to cover up something worse. Either way, Mark Bridgers remains in custody. There is no question that he did something to April. However, it remains unclear where April is and whether she is still alive. The police distrust Mark so much that they believe it is possible that April is still being hidden somewhere and is still alive. And even if that is not the case, April must be brought home to her family, dead or alive. So the already huge search is expanded once again. Hundreds of police officers and volunteers from the region come together to comb through everything in search of the girl. It is one of the largest search operations in the history of the United Kingdom. At the same time, the police are pursuing other leads. Mark Bridger continues to be questioned. Witnesses are sought and their statements evaluated. A witness testifies that she saw Mark on the morning of October 2nd near a river that runs close to his home. The witness noticed that Mark was carrying a large black garbage bag. The police conclude that April's body could have been in the bag. But when they search the river and the riverbank, they find nothing. So they search Mark Bridger's house again. This time, they find tiny drops of blood on the bathroom wall. Although there are only a few splatters, they could be of great importance to the investigators. While these bloodstains are being analyzed in the laboratory, they return to the place where April disappeared. Mark claimed that he ran April over. Accordingly, there should be bloodstains visible at the scene. Forensic scientists search the street meticulously but find nothing. There is not the slightest trace of an accident. No fibers from April's clothing. No traces of paint from her pink bicycle. Apart from Mark Bridger's statement, there is officially nothing to suggest a car accident. Even more incriminating are the results of the forensic examination of the bloodstains. The blood found on the bathroom wall of Mark's house really does belong to April. April's blood is also found on the collar of one of Mark's shirts. The traces are small, but they are there. Mark explains that he probably had April's blood on his hands. When he washed his hands at home, some blood must have splattered on the wall. However, there are no traces of blood in the car, so it doesn't make sense. April's DNA is also found on the inside of Mark's jogging pants. In addition, there are photos and videos of minors on his laptop. When he's shown the recordings, Mark denies feeling anything. Once again, the police are certain that he is lying. There are more than 500 photos on the computer. But that's not all. There are more photos of children stored on his laptop. For example, of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, two girls who were murdered in the UK years ago. And also photos of girls from Mark's neighborhood. Among them are some of April's 16-year-old sister Yasmin. Mark even sent her a friend request on Facebook. He sent her several messages saying that they knew each other and that he was friends with Jasmine's parents. Jasmine asked her parents about it at the time. Her father, Paul, did know Mark, but the two men weren't really friends. About 20 years ago, they occasionally went out together in their cars. Lately, they had only greeted each other occasionally in town. But that was it. That's why the Joneses found this friend request strange even back then. Especially since Mark, who was in his early 30s, was dating a girl who was only 15. But Jasmine simply rejected the request, and the Joneses put it out of their minds. No one could have predicted that Mark would allegedly murder the family's youngest daughter a year later. Just 9 days before April's disappearance, Mark is said to have saved more than 20 photos of Yasmin. He copied the photos from her Facebook profile. Some of them showed April alongside Yasmin. And that's enough for the investigators. Mark Bridger is officially charged with the murder of April Jones. Although the girl's body has not been found, the evidence against him is overwhelming. Just a few weeks after April's disappearance, Mark Bridger is put on trial. He is charged with kidnapping, murder, and disposing of a corpse. He pleads not guilty. Mark Bridger has several previous convictions for theft, assault, and possession of weapons. However, none of his previous convictions were related to crimes against children. Nevertheless, the police are certain that Mark was deliberately intent on kidnapping a child on October 1st. The police believe that Mark lured April into his car with a false promise. He probably told her she could stay overnight with his daughter. Then he took April to his home, where he eventually murdered her and disposed of her body. Mark, however, maintains his claim that he accidentally ran April over with his car. He still cannot remember what he did with the body. But as you heard in the previous chapter, the evidence against Mark Bridger is indisputable. In court, it also emerges that traces of April's blood were found in other rooms of the house as well as next to the bathroom. And there's something else. Bone fragments were found in Mark's fireplace. They are so badly burned that they cannot be identified. All that can be determined is that they are skull fragments from a younger person. The police have no doubt that they are April's remains. This is consistent with the fact that the fireplace was lit when the police first entered Mark's house on October 2nd. What's more, there was a strong smell of cleaning products at the time. He probably tried to remove as much of the blood as possible from the house. Mark is found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. So he will definitely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Months after the trial, it emerges that Mark Bridger is said to have confessed to a prison guard. He is said to have confessed to sinking April's body in Afon Dulles. This is a river that flows directly past Mark's house and joins a larger river a few miles further on. This would also fit with the statement of the witness who claims to have seen Mark near the river with a garbage bag. However, the police believe that Mark is lying here as well. They consider it more likely that Mark burned April and then scattered her remains in the countryside around his property. This made it impossible to ever find the girl. Nevertheless, a large funeral is held for April in September 2013. The 17 bone fragments recovered from Mark's fireplace lie in a child's coffin. Several hundred people attend the funeral service to say goodbye to April. There is hardly any black decoration at the funeral. Instead, everything is pink, April's favorite color. Sadly, April's father, Paul Jones, has also died in the meantime. 6 years after April's disappearance, he was diagnosed with a brain disease. As a result, He lost many of his memories in 2018. For example, he still knew that he and his wife Coral had 3 children. However, he could no longer remember what had happened to April. He repeatedly looked at photos of the family and asked his wife where April was. She had to explain to him again and again what had been done to their daughter. He died in early 2025 at the age of only 55. He never found out where his daughter's remains were. A few years before his diagnosis, Paul and April's mother Coral were present at another very important day. Mark Bridger's house was demolished. The place where April was probably killed is now history. The Joneses watched as the walls were torn down. Although April's body was never found, Coral said in an interview that the family has found closure. The most important thing is that Mark Bridger was convicted, and what remains are the beautiful memories of April. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, I would really appreciate a like and a comment. If you have any suggestions for videos, feel free to write them in the comments. This also helps support the channel, as any interaction increases the likelihood that the video will be suggested to people who haven't subscribed to Insolito yet. Other than that, there's not much else to say. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, bye everyone.